3 million years ago, as early humans began to appear on Earth, our protagonist was among them. At first, he seemed just like any other primitive being, but there was something different about him, something that set him apart. Despite his unusual obsession with hunting, the MC believed he was no different from everyone else. However, he soon realized something was wrong. While those around him aged, weakened, and eventually died, he didn't. No matter what happened, he simply wouldn't die. Time passed, eons came and went, yet he remained the same. Well, not exactly the same. While the years left no mark on him, his body kept changing, growing larger, stronger, more powerful. Through endless time, the only things that kept him going were hunting, fighting, and battling anything or anyone that seemed worth his time. He was cursed with eternal life and unbearable loneliness, and those were the only things that gave him any joy. For nearly 3 million years he lived this way, his body evolving day by day, becoming stronger and stronger. Eventually, he reached a point where his strength was unmatched, so much so that others began to call him the God of Earth. His power grew to the extent that he defeated every other god in existence, claiming the title of the strongest in the divine realm. But after that, things started to change. With no one left to challenge him, his once thrilling days of combat and excitement turned into an endless stretch of boredom. To show just how fed up he was with his dull routine, Mu raised his foot and slammed it down on the ground beneath him. The entire dwelling of the gods, which resembled a small planet, shook violently from the impact. But that wasn't even the worst part. The whole divine realm started trembling, leaving every god, angel, and even the evils within it absolutely terrified. Of course, this wasn't the first time God Mu had pulled such a stunt, and there were some gods who couldn't take being shaken up every day. One of them was Lucifer, the second-ranked god in the divine realm. Completely bored, Mu acted as though he didn't care about the chaos he was causing. His mind was consumed with the same thought that had plagued him for centuries. He had defeated every single worthy opponent without breaking a sweat, and now, over 1,000 years had passed since he faced anyone who could challenge him. Letting out a deep sigh, Mu muttered, "Being too strong is a problem too." The words clicked in his mind. After 1,000 years of mindless frustration, he suddenly felt like a genius. If his strength was the problem, the solution was simple. He needed to find a way to weaken himself. If he had a weak body like the Earthlings, he'd have hundreds of opponents to fight. Suddenly, Mu stood up and shouted, "Dragonling!" Out of nowhere, a massive dragon appeared in the sky above him, then descended with a thunderous landing. The dragon's height was at least 5 times bigger than Mu's throne, and from its stance, it didn't seem thrilled to be summoned. But those glowing eyes belonged to Liam, Mu's assistant. Liam's demeanor shifted, and he let out a deep growl, asking why he had been called. To his surprise, Mu simply started walking away and casually told Liam to take care of things while he was gone. However, things didn't go as Mu expected. Out of nowhere, the dragon cast a spell called Binding of the Absolute, shackling Mu in an attempt to stop him. But the moment Mu turned his head and gave him a side glance filled with anger, Liam's entire demeanor shifted again. His fierce and wild attitude melted away, and he suddenly looked scared and ashamed. Stammering, the dragon tried to explain himself, saying he didn't mean to offend Mu, but that Mu should have at least given an explanation, especially since a gods meeting was coming up soon. Mu, however, didn't care about the gods meeting. Without saying another word, he started walking again, dragging Liam along with the chains like they were nothing. Seeing his plan fail, Liam quickly switched tactics and started playing the victim. He whined that if Mu didn't show up for the meeting, he'd be the one stuck dealing with the other gods' endless complaints. In response, Mu effortlessly broke the binding spell as if it was nothing. He turned to Liam and yelled, saying he wouldn't go anywhere unless the dragon agreed to fight him right now. That was all it took to completely change Liam's attitude. Realizing that taking blame from the other gods was far better than being torn apart by Mu, Liam immediately wished him a safe and short trip. Mu smirked and walked toward a small version of Earth floating nearby. Stretching out his hand, he touched the surface, wondering whose body he should inhabit. To make his decision easier, he started listening to messages Earthlings were sending to the gods. Most were trivial, but one message caught his attention. It questioned his very existence. At first, the message annoyed Mu, but soon he realized this person was the perfect choice for his journey on Earth. For the first time in 1,000 years, Mu felt genuinely excited. He had finally found a solution to his endless boredom. While Mu couldn't have been happier, Liam looked far less enthusiastic about the whole thing. For a brief moment, Mu considered giving an explanation before leaving. But true to his Sigma personality, he decided against it. To Liam's surprise, Mu simply said goodbye, entrusted the place to him, and told him to take care of anyone who might show up in his absence. Liam felt a mix of worry and frustration. Mu was only sending his soul to Earth, leaving his body behind. Concerned, the dragon tried to remind him of the risks. If something happened to Mu's body, his separated soul would die on Earth. But Mu, confident no one in the divine realm would dare harm him, brushed off the concerns and did what he wanted without further explanation. The scene abruptly shifted. It wasn't Mu anymore, but someone entirely different. Someone who had just defeated a demon lord in a video game. The feeling of victory was overwhelming, but it wasn't real life. It was just the final scene of a game a player had finished moments ago. That player was a 17-year-old named Lee Ho. Lee was painfully jealous of the heroes in every video game he played. Those lucky protagonists who always gathered hordes of cute girls on their ridiculous adventures. As he stared at the game credits, he sighed, wishing his life were anything like theirs. Suddenly, Lee's phone slipped from his hand, falling from a great height. The phone hit the ground with a loud crash, shattering into pieces. It became clear why Lee was standing on the edge of a 3-story building. He was ready to end his life. Trembling and covered in injuries, Lee whispered a bitter farewell to this cruel world before jumping. As he fell, he screamed, "If there's a god out there, prove it! Send me to another world!" But before he could finish, he hit the ground with a sickening thud. Blood splattered everywhere, and his head smashed into the pavement. By all accounts, he should have been dead. But then something strange happened. Lee's hands twitched, his chest heaved, and he started breathing heavily as though someone had pulled him from drowning. Unknown to Lee, God Mu's soul had possessed his body in the blink of an eye. Now, Mu was forced to endure the unbearable pain of Lee's broken body, completely unaware of what had just happened. Meanwhile, Lee's soul had been transported to the divine realm, where he stood, utterly shocked, face to face with a towering dragon. The dragon, too, was stunned. He hadn't expected to see a human in the divine realm, just as Lee hadn't expected the first thing he'd see after dying to be an angry dragon glaring at him. Let's rewind and see what happened 10 seconds before this incident unfolded. Mu was standing there, touching the surface of the mini-Earth with his signature smirk. He wasn't worried about leaving his defenseless body behind. He had full confidence it would be safe. The dragon had tried to warn him, but Mu brushed off the warnings and sent his soul to Earth, swapping places with Lee's soul. The moment Mu's soul entered Lee's body, he found himself in a life-or-death situation. With no time to adjust, he was plummeting toward the ground. Before he could even process the danger, Lee's body hit the ground with incredible force. Bones shattered, and Mu experienced pain beyond anything he had ever felt in his immortal life. But it wasn't the pain that confused him. It was the sheer chaos of the situation. Why did this happen? How had he ended up in such a mess? Seconds later, Mu's heart started beating again. By forcing his blood to flow and repairing his heart, he managed to stop the bleeding. Slowly, he began to rise to his feet, though his body screamed in pain. Rather than anger, Mu found himself oddly happy. It had been so long since he'd felt anything like this. The next step was to sift through Lee's memories, which didn't take long. He learned that Lee had lived alone, was poor, and was constantly bullied. This was exactly the chaotic, messy starting point Mu had hoped for. It had potential for challenges. Full of excitement, Mu threw a random punch into the air, but the sharp pain that shot through his arm reminded him that this wasn't his indestructible body. Despite the pain, Mu smirked. He had found exactly what he was looking for. The next day, police arrived at the scene where Leo's body had crashed to the ground, discovering bloodstains and shattered glass scattered across the pavement. They swiftly cordoned off the area, barring anyone from entering as they began their investigation. Meanwhile, Mu returned to the site, not out of concern for the police, but because the 3-story building nearby was none other than Lee's school. Determined to maintain Lee's daily routine, he strolled into the school, scanning the halls until he located Lee's classroom. His excitement got the better of him as he yanked the sliding door open with excessive force. The door rebounded, smacking him square in the face and leaving the mighty god momentarily dazed. His triumphant entrance ruined. Mu muttered under his breath before stepping inside, drawing the attention of one of Lee's classmates. The boy scowled at the noise, shooting Mu an irritated glare. "Idiot Lee Ho!" he snapped. "Keep it down." Hearing the insult, Mu forgot the pain in his face and strode toward the boy, stopping uncomfortably close. The bully, recognizable from Lee's memories as the one who tormented him, was taken aback, not by Lee's frail appearance but by the unsettling grin twisting Mu's lips. "What's wrong with you?" the bully sneered. "Did you forget your glasses, or are you just too stupid to act normal today?" Before Mu could respond, the boy swung his fist, landing a hard punch to his face. Blood dripped from Mu's nose and mouth, pooling on the floor. The bully smirked, clearly pleased with himself. "Did you sell your glasses for cash, or are you just that much of a loser?" he taunted. Despite the blood, Mu didn't flinch. To him, a true fight only began when both parties willingly showed their intent to battle. And Mu confirmed that intent by enduring the first strike. The moment the punch connected, exhilaration surged through him. Without hesitation, he retaliated, driving his own fist into the bully's face. But as he pulled back, a sharp pain tore through his arm. His human body wasn't built for this. The commotion drew the teacher's angry shouts, but the entire class was already watching, captivated by the spectacle of the school's weakest student standing up to a bully. Humiliated, the bully charged again, ignoring the teacher's commands. Mu blocked most of the blows, though his fragile body struggled to keep up. For a fleeting moment, he considered using his godly powers, only to find them useless. Distracted, he took another punch to the face, thankfully weaker than the last. Realizing brute force wouldn't work, Mu lowered his head and let the next strike land on his skull, the one part of this body he could rely on. Just as he predicted, the bully's fingers shattered on impact, his scream piercing the air. Seizing the advantage, Mu lunged forward, headbutting the bully in the stomach, then again in the jaw. The boy collapsed, unconscious, as the class watched in stunned silence. But Mu wasn't finished. In a move that horrified everyone, he leaned down, bit off a piece of the bully's ear and spat it onto the floor. Blood splattered as students recoiled in shock. To Mu, this wasn't savagery. It was a mark of respect, a twisted acknowledgement of a worthy opponent. The news spread like wildfire. The weakest student had not only beaten a bully but marked him. Emergency services arrived, hauling the boy away as Mu watched, amused. He waved goodbye, already hoping for a rematch. Then a furious teacher grabbed him, dragging him to the office. "Have you lost your mind?" the teacher roared, raising a binder as if to strike. Mu didn't flinch. Instead, he grinned, his face flushing with excitement. Hand midair, unwilling to risk the same fate as the student in the hospital, he chose to skip the punishment entirely. Instead, he turned to Mu, whom he believed was Li Ho, and ordered him to bring his parents to school the next day. Mu braced himself, expecting a strike from the teacher, but when the anticipated blow never came, the confirmation of their battle, he abandoned the thought of fighting back. Just then, the teacher dismissed him, allowing him to leave school earlier than the others. Without protest, Mu obeyed and exited the building. As he walked toward Li's house, Mu's mind wandered. Unlike other gods who possessed complete knowledge of the worlds they governed, Mu was uncertain about the teacher's intentions. Was "leave earlier" a suggestion to return to his base, or something else entirely? Since no other explanation made sense, he assumed it was just that. Deciding to use this unexpected free time, he focused on healing his injuries and training his fragile new body. If he wanted to face stronger opponents in the future, he needed to grow stronger. His hand trembled visibly from the pain of his earlier wounds. At that moment, he longed to use his godly powers, like mana, to accelerate his recovery. Mana, as Mu understood it, was a force beyond human capability. In some realms, it was called chi, or chakra, but most gods referred to it as mana, a life force permeating nature, granting humans extraordinary abilities. It allowed them to become hunters, wizards, or even powerful players in different worlds. Yet, in this world, Mu couldn't rely on it, no matter how much he desired to. For now, he had to endure the pain and adapt to his new life and body. He attempted to channel mana once more, but it dissipated within seconds, reminding him of his earlier failed attempt during battle. Frustrated, he resolved to focus solely on physical training. Before long, Mu arrived at Li's home and collapsed onto the bed. Knowing his recovery would take time, with little else to do, he decided to return to the god's realm to check on events there. In an instant, his soul shifted back to his original body, just as it had when he first came to Earth. As Mu regained consciousness, his eyes widened in shock. Before him, Li Ho was choking a dragonling, refusing to release the helpless creature. The once weak boy, bullied relentlessly on Earth, now turned to Mu with newfound confidence, demanding he hand over the dragon. Unaware of Mu's true identity as a god, Li believed he could seize control of the dragonling to dominate his new life. Displeased by Li's arrogance, Mu summoned a godly hand and gripped him tightly, making it clear he wouldn't tolerate such insolence. Ignoring Li's protests, Mu dragged him away, his expression hinting at ulterior motives. Minutes later, they arrived at the domain of Lucifer, the second-ranked god in the divine realm. Mu strode in confidently, his presence undeniable. Lucifer, unlike Mu, was diligently overseeing his planet, Elur. Without hesitation or permission, Mu marched into Lucifer's castle as if he were dealing with an ordinary mortal. Naturally, Lucifer was displeased by Mu's rudeness and immediately rejected whatever requests they had, refusing to even hear them out. Unfazed, Mu demanded Lucifer open the gate, declaring his intention to send Li to the planet Elmer. Lucifer retorted that Elmer wasn't Mu's domain, so he had no authority to make such a decision. Mu, however, leaned in and reminded Lucifer of their power disparity, asserting he could do as he pleased. To emphasize his point, he challenged Lucifer to test his strength if he doubted it. Knowing he was outmatched, Lucifer trembled in frustration. Tired of Lucifer's hesitation, Mu stepped forward and touched Elmer's surface himself. Caught off guard, Lucifer warned that interfering with another god's domain was forbidden. Any unauthorized contact would trigger an unbreakable barrier. True to his word, the barrier appeared, but to Lucifer's disbelief, Mu shattered it effortlessly. Stunned, Lucifer stared as Mu calmly remarked that the universe's rules could be changed by those with the will to do so. Mu then released Li, urging him to leap into the portal he had created on Elmer. Li hesitated, fear evident, but Mu reminded him this was the opportunity he had always begged for. When Li again demanded the Dragonling to dominate his new life, Mu refused and forcefully sent him to Elmer. Afterward, Mu mused about how modern youths expected everything handed to them without effort. With the matter settled, he casually instructed Lucifer to take care of the boy before departing. Humiliated and seething, Lucifer could only fantasize about tearing Mu apart. Lucifer's past mirrored Mu's in some ways. Once the first demon lord in history, he had claimed the title of the strongest on Elmer's planet. In his arrogance, he challenged the god ruling his world, defeating him with a blinding sword of light. Afterward, Lucifer overthrew every other god, claiming the ultimate throne as the god of gods, invincible and supreme. But his reign ended when Mu arrived and crushed him, shattering his mighty image before all. Consumed by rage, Lucifer vowed revenge, cursing Mu as a human-born bastard. Back in the present, Mu rode his dragonling toward his domain. Unaware a demon, likely sent by Lucifer, was watching from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.